So the last dance had its last dance. Donnovan Bennett, Jesse Rubinoff, Faizal Khamisa here to break down the final two episodes and maybe more of a macro breakdown of the docuseries as a whole. But guys, I want to start with a couple things here, and I didn't know which one to start with, but I think this is the craziest thing. As in most places, Dennis Rodman is involved. And in episode 10, we get the story of Dennis Rodman after the Bulls win a finals game missing practice because he flew to Detroit to participate in a WWE event with Hulk Hogan. Donovan, it sounds like those Mad Lib books I used to fill out where you just pick a name and pick a noun and pick an action. And it's like Dennis Rodman left practice to go wrestle during a finals game. But that's a real damn sentence. And I still don't know how to wrap my head around any of it.
A real damn sentence, a real damn occurrence was that Carmen Electra was featured giving anecdotes in this series basically two more times than Ron Harper was, basically. Like that's where we are. Thank you, Dennis Rodman, for that. My guy was snuck out the back door, not of the club, of the arena, literally sprinting away from media. I know that there are so many aspects of this documentary that just would not really play in 2020, or they would take on an entire new life. Seeing E&G camera guy sprinting up a flight of steps
upstairs, man, like
going after Dennis Rodman, I'm like, I wish this happened in the TikTok era.
Ruby, your thoughts on all this? Because it was a mess, man.
I think the best part about it is that he somehow, even though we had behind the scenes footage of it, he seems to always get away with this stuff. Like they had the meeting in the huddle and it seemed like everything was hunky-dory. At the same time, what are you going to do in the finals? You can't really suspend Dennis Rodman, then you're letting down the rest of the team. So it's a really interesting dynamic, but it just proves that Dennis Rodman was able to get away with so much that I don't think NBA players in this day and age would be able to get away with.
It also proves that Phil Jackson got it.
Yeah.
Like, what was Dennis Rodman going to learn at shoot-around about rebounding and annoying Karl Malone? Nothing. So let Dennis be Dennis. Dennis, after this, played total 35 career games. And I just think that this was part of Phil Jackson's genius. He understood his players, and he knew how to get the most out of them.
What I didn't understand, and this is some of my concerns on the docuseries as a whole, and we'll get to maybe the more macro point in a bit, but we didn't hear an opinion from Michael Jordan on Rodzilla and the situation, present day or past day. And I found that in a docuseries about Michael Jordan, curated by Michael Jordan, DJ, there were no thoughts from Michael Jordan on one of the wildest incidents that happened during his time at the Bulls.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the scotch was a little low and Jordan went for a refill and just came back and they moved on to another topic, but it's true. There were a couple things I would have loved to have seen unpacked a little bit more. The mailman doesn't deliver on Sundays. That's probably the greatest bit of trash talk ever from Scottie Pippen, who, unless he was talking about Jerry Krause, didn't really trash talk. And so the fact that you have Karl Malone, one of the greatest power forwards, players, scorers of all time, bricking a massive free throw because Scottie Pippen got in his head, man, I needed to hear from Scottie about that. I wanted to hear if MJ fed him that line. I mean, we didn't hear from Karl Malone at all. I wanted to hear from Karl Malone about that. Like, so that's the thing that I was like, okay, it's got to be coming. Wait a minute, like, did we miss it? Do I need to rewind? I hate the fact that we never heard about that line.
Jesse.
Yeah, I feel like if I were to unpack a little bit more in this documentary, it would have been more perspectives of what it was like to play against Jordan as opposed to being his teammate. Because throughout the 10 episodes, we got a lot of Scottie Pippen, a lot of Steve Kerr, a lot of Phil Jackson, and that's great. And that the purpose of it was obviously the Bulls, but we heard from Reggie Miller a little bit, Gary Payton a little bit, but like you said, DJ, we didn't hear from Karl Malone. We didn't really hear that much from John Stockton. So it would have been cool to hear perspectives from the guys that played against him and what it was like to actually play someone who was so hyper competitive and playing against the best player of their generation and probably of all time. So I would have liked to hear a little bit more information there.
Well, and I don't disagree with you because I found the Reggie Miller stuff at the beginning of episode 9 extremely compelling. And maybe that helps that Reggie Miller does this for a living, despite people's opinions on how he does it for a living. He's an extremely compelling storyteller, and he was really good at taking us back. And I thought those scenes were really, really good. And reliving that Game 4 ending from the Eastern Conference Final when Reggie hits a shot and they put more time back on the clock, and MJ misses that shot that spins around the rim. Like, I know how these things ended, and I'm feeling that. I was like, oh, no, poor Reggie, poor Pacers. Like, they're going to get done up by MJ. And he misses a shot, and of course, they get done up by MJ anyways. And then they end up, the Bulls obviously going to the finals. And that's when we get the flu game theory now dispelled, because he wasn't sick because of the flu. Apparently, he was sick because of food poisoning. I have some questions about this as well, because I'm trying to understand if MJ told nobody else to eat the pizza, why on earth he would eat the pizza despite just being hungry. And I don't know, Donovan. It adds to the mythology of Michael Jordan, obviously, which is what I think a lot of this docuseries did, but I still don't fully buy it.
Yeah, evidently they didn't have contactless delivery in Utah at the time, because 5 dudes had to come deliver the pizza to the door. And I mean, I know it was like 11, but the Marriott even in the 90s didn't have late night delivery. Despite that, I could actually, with Tim Grover, who was his trainer, who was a great storyteller, and Jordan, I could really envision Jordan just like quarantine style dominating this pizza by himself. But yeah, I 100%, maybe I just want to believe the myth, 100% believe that his food was tampered with, because it just makes the story better.
Yeah, the flu game was hyped up, and rightfully so. But one of the things I really enjoyed about the documentary is that when we look back on Jordan's career, we focus on things like the flu game, but we don't really remember the times where he missed shots at the buzzer. It's almost like this mentality where Michael Jordan, every single time the game was on the line, he always made the shot. But there were times in this documentary, and you saw it in the Jazz series, you saw it in the Pacers series, where Jordan had a chance to win at the end of the game, and he actually missed. Now, the legend of Michael Jordan is that more often than not, he would respond by then the next game or later in the series, putting the dagger through the heart of his opponent. So I thought that was pretty revealing and good for fans to see that even Michael Jordan didn't make 100% of the shots that he took.
The documentary is now finished, and we've been doing this thing, deciding who earned the biggest L of the 2-episode arc. So I got some for this episode, and then maybe we can go bigger on it as well. So biggest L options, guys. And Jesse, I'm going to start with you. So be ready. Self-declaring nicknames, because we always say they're trash, but Black Jesus is pretty good. Science, after Reggie Miller still looks the exact damn same from 1997. Chronology, this docuseries jumped all over the place and it confused me for a little bit. The Utah pizza place for obvious reasons. The flu game mythology. They named a shoe after the flu game, but apparently he didn't have the flu. Okay. Utah bathrooms for obvious reasons after MJ was sick. Steve Kerr's comedy career I liked at the parade in 97. He's like, guess I had to bail Michael out again. It was okay. It wasn't great. News desks after no one got footage of Rodman in practice after missing one to go wrestling. Scott Burrell, who just always seemed to take the brunt of MJ's crap. The ref for missing the push-off. Those horrible sunglasses MJ wore at the championship rally in 98. Or Titanic, because Leo DiCaprio, at the height of Titanic fame, goes and congratulates the Bulls. And MJ's like, I just watched your other movie that nobody knows about, Man in the Iron Mask or whatever the hell it was. So poor Titanic, because even MJ didn't care about popular. So Jesse, biggest L or other, of course, in this 2-episode series or this 2-episode arc.
So I think in the beginning of the documentary, in terms of chronology, when Jordan was younger, it was really easy to tell him apart from when he was older. He was skinnier. He looked a lot younger. But then the closer you got to the 98 season, so you got the 95, 96, 97 seasons, and I found it a little bit difficult to keep up with the chronology, and it was a little bit confusing because you get to the teams, and the teams end up being very similar, 97, 98. So when they show the Pacers series, they show the Jazz series, it gets a little bit confusing when it gets to that. So I would say in these 2 episodes, I think the chronology, I don't really know how to do it differently, but it was a little bit confusing for me.
I mean, I think in a weird way, Scottie Pippen takes an L.
I agree. You know what? I actually was thinking of putting that on the list, but I didn't know if people would understand what I was trying to say, but thank you. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so he shows up. I mean, episode 2 is his, but the other major plot points he shows up in are has a migraine headache when maybe the Bulls defeat the Pistons a year earlier than they actually do. contract dispute, decides he's going to have surgery late and basically sabotage the last year. Asked to be traded. When Jordan is gone, refuses to go in a game in a clutch situation because the play is drawn for Tony Kukoc. And he redeems himself in episode 10 playing through bad back spasms, but you got to get there to figure that out. And so given he, for many of these years, was the second best player on the planet, I think he kind of takes an L because all of the really interesting things about him, for the most part, were kind of negative. The other thing that takes an L for me were those Oakley sunglasses. Both Jordan and Pippen had them on in the parade. And man, they were like, you guys are a bit younger, so you probably never checked for them, but they were really, really hot at the time. But they look so dumb now.
Man, they look like goggles. Like I thought he was gonna dive into a pool and give me 100 meters right now. You know, like I didn't really understand the fashion back then, but the fashion back then probably takes a huge L as well.
Are we talking winners too, FaZe?
Yeah, of course. Hit me with the winner.
I got to say, Phil Jackson, just the personality really shone through in this documentary. His ability to navigate such difficult personalities. You had Michael Jordan, you had Scottie Pippen, you had Dennis Rodman, obviously, and the expectations of a team that people expected to win every single time they went out of the floor. And he was the perfect personality for that team. He was calm, he was zen, and we saw even when things went off the rails with Rodman, he was able to rally the team back together and get the team to the pinnacle of the sport. So shout out to Phil Jackson. I think he did a marvelous job, obviously, coaching the Chicago Bulls, and deserves a W in this documentary.
Not a good executive, though. TJ, go ahead.
I guess my ironic winner might be the late 90s Pacers. Like, to get the nod from MJ that was the team that really pushed us. And I forgot they took them to a game 7.
Yeah.
We see how clutch Reggie was in his prime. Larry Joe Bird just like looking up at the clock being like, okay, yeah, I know we hit this, but Jordan might hit another one. And I forgot they had the Davis brothers. They had Smits. They had a young Jalen Rose. They had Mark Jackson.
Yeah.
And obviously Reggie. And they all were solid, went with the bald heads in the playoffs to take on the dude with the bald head. I forgot those Pacer teams were good. We referenced the Knicks and the Pistons and even the Hall of Fame Celtics as teams that Jordan went through in the East. We don't really talk about that Pacers team, and they were pretty good.
My biggest winner is Nike and Jordan, who's seen their sales go through the roof, obviously, as a result of the shots of the shoes and the talk of the shoes in the series. There's a game worn pair from 85 that sold for over $750,000 Canadian just a couple days ago. And so I felt in a lot of ways, and this ties into one of the final things I want to talk about. There's a lot of hashtag ad going on in here, it feels. And it was always seemingly going to be this way when Jordan was given control of the documentary. Is there a little bit of, I guess what I'm trying to ask is there an argument to be made that this documentary was too biased because of who was in control of it, and the subject of the documentary was the one who had final say in the documentary? Because again, there are a lot of questions that went unanswered. We heard from his kids. Carmen Electra had more lines than his children, and we don't hear from wife 1 or wife 2 in any capacity. And there was a lot of questions about MJ, the father at the time. And I'm not here to dispel any of that. I'm not here to give an opinion on any of that. We just never talk about any of that. And I wonder if it's because the guy that's in charge of the final product is the guy who the documentary is on.
Yeah, it's a legit question. I kind of look at it not so much as a documentary, but a entertainment-mentary, if that was a word. Okay. And so similar to the Defiant ones that was obviously made by Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre, you understand the lens you're watching it through. They're producing it, but it was still fire and it was still entertaining. And so I think it's different than something like, made in America, the OJ 30 for 30, where people were really looking at a deep dive on the person and the culture. I think people in this instance were happy just to be entertained. So I understand why maybe, the director had to fly a little too close to the sun because MJ was giving final approval on anything, but it accomplished the goal for me, which was give me some nostalgia and entertain me.
Yeah, there's very little negative said about Michael Jordan. And when there was always sort of an excuse, or it was blamed on his hyper competitiveness. And I feel like that is part of what came from Jordan. It's like, okay, I did some things to my teammates. I treated them like crap in certain situations, but it was all for a purpose. And we didn't really hear the detractors. We didn't hear from people who actually ended up disliking Michael Jordan. There was none of that in this documentary. It was all people who understood the process that Michael Jordan went through. He had to push people to get to a certain point.
Even Charles Barkley, who they don't speak today, had praise for MJ as well. Do you think Michael Jordan, and I left the documentary when I watched episode 10 thinking this, is he satisfied with how the career played out? Like, we saw the last bits were him listening to Jerry Reinsdorf's clip about why Reinsdorf, the owner of the Bulls, had to break up a team that won 6 titles in 8 years because everybody was going to want too much money, despite the team making astronomical amounts of that money because of number 23, 45, 11 for that one quarter, that one time. Like, I felt like he wanted to do more and he couldn't. And so I left asking the question, is Michael Jordan satisfied with how his career played out? And ultimately I landed on yes, but I'm curious as to your thoughts. Deej.
No, I don't think Michael Jordan is satisfied with anything. I mean, he talked about the fact that he believed that they could win a 7th, that he wanted to go after it and at least try. And think about it, in terms of guys who were on one team who won 7 or more chips, you have to go back to the Celtics in the 1950s and 60s. And we now know that the line of demarcation, judging a great player, is Jordan at 6, right? Kobe, did he get to 6? That was always the question. He did not. LeBron, barely halfway there at this point in the later stages of his career. So I think if Jordan could have pushed that envelope more, I think he wants to. I think he probably still thinks about it based on the sentiment and the expression on his face. But Scottie barely came back that last year. It's been tough to get him to come back another. We mentioned the fact that Rodman barely played after that. And Phil Jackson was already, taking offers from other teams. So realistically, I don't know if they could have brought the band back together. But man, as a competitor, if you're Jordan and you go out as the finals MVP hitting the game-winning shot, I think you're going out literally on top. I think you have to want to try and run it back and do it again.
Is he satisfied?
Unless you're Kawhi.
Yeah. Is he satisfied? Probably not, because he's Michael Jordan. But should he be satisfied? I mean, this is Michael freaking Jordan. Like, he is considered the greatest basketball player of all time and one of the greatest athletes to ever walk the face of the earth. So what exactly does he want? What more could Michael Jordan want? He is the face of basketball. He's a global enterprise. He might have wanted that 7th NBA title, but I think he should look back on his career and be satisfied with what transpired.
When you ask the question, what else could he want? The answer simply, by whatever definition you have of this word, is more, is just more. And that seems to be the trend with MJ. He wanted more and more and more to continue to prove and prove and prove that he could get more and more and more. And so, I ultimately decided, all right, multi-billion dollars, NBA owner, the widely argued as the GOAT in the sport or in athletics in general, and a pop culture phenomenon at a time when athletes weren't that. All right, probably if you looked back and had to check off boxes that led to an answer, you would be satisfied, but who the hell knows with MJ? And for as much introspection as we got for him, I still leave thinking, who is this guy? Because he is larger than life in every single way. And you said it, Donnovan, it was great entertainment, necessary entertainment at a time like this as well. And so there's going to be a time, maybe not now or maybe not in a month, but I will watch it back from a completely different lens without having to take notes or do anything, and probably just enjoy it for what it was as well, and still be compelled and anxious with every shot that has to go down. So that was cool. The Last Dance was really, really good. Guys, thank you so much. It was fun to be able to wrap the latter half of the episodes with you guys as well. And for everybody watching, hope you enjoyed it. Jesse Rubinoff, Donnovan Bennett, Faizal Khamisa saying, actually, I don't have a cool exit for this one. How did MJ end it? We need to put like a title credit at the end. Faizal Khamisa went on to nap for 3 more hours. Donnovan Bennett couldn't get a haircut for another week. Jesse Rubinoff ended up having to edit this whole piece together. Good luck, Jesse. Thanks for this, guys.